only learn through experience. I've been through some transformations myself. Boy, it's tough. It's
Yeah.
really
We
tough.
we always talk about this with prospective clients. They're used to consultants that, kind of say everything but haven't actually done anything, and we're really the opposite
You
of
mean
that.
PowerPoint
Everyone at the
jockeys? You mean
Yeah.
PowerPoint jockeys? Welcome to Embracing Digital Transformation, where we investigate effective change leveraging people, process, and technology. This is Darren Pulsipher, Chief Solution Architect, author, and most importantly, your host. On this episode, the power of culture in digital transformation, with special guests Jonathan Murray and Lynn Gilbert from Mod Op Strategic Consulting. Lynn, Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Nice to be
Great to
here.
be here.
So before we dive into digital transformation and organizational change and all those things that we want to talk about today, I always tell my audience and the people coming on my show that I only have superheroes on the show. So because you guys are superheroes, every superhero has a backstory. Um, make it really interesting because the best superheroes have the coolest backstories. So Lynn, let's start with you. What's your backstory, superhero Lynn?
I guess I look like a supervillain like Lex Luthor or something, but my story isn't quite that interesting. I'm Len Gilbert, and I've been doing digital transformation in some form or another for, boy, close to 30 years now.
Wow.
I really, right out of school, I started on the digital side with working with America Online and producing a book entertainment site that was, I would say, very very early stage for AOL. I then went to barnesandnoble.com and Barnes and Noble and was one of their first employees and ran a number of initiatives for them, everything from online marketing to creating something called Barnes and Noble University, where 750,000 people took courses based on books taught and created by the authors of those books back in the
Awesome.
days when that had to be done via bulletin board because you couldn't put video online.
Right.
Um, so I was there for about 10 years. And then after that, I had stints at LexisNexis and McGraw-Hill S&P Global, again, leading digital transformation from within. Also worked at some startups. And then I've been at ModOp Strategic Consulting for the last 10 years, taking a lot of what I learned by being in the trenches on digital transformation and helping our clients do very similar things.
So that's really interesting because you've taken brick and mortar, traditional brick and mortar organizations into digital transformation. That's tough
Yeah.
stuff.
We were a case study, unfortunately, not really in the in the most positive way,
Well,
given some of
that
the
happens
issues with
too, right?
Amazon,
Yeah.
but certainly learned a lot in the process.
Absolutely. All right, Jonathan, your backstory.
Hey, Darren, how are you? Very nice to meet you. Jonathan Murray. So I guess my backstory goes back to 84 when I was a earth sciences major who graduated and needed a job. So I ended up getting my first job working telephone support for ADP in the UK,
Oh, gosh.
answering phones for uh, anybody who even remembers the mainframe PDP-10s back
Oh
in the
yeah,
day with
yeah.
paper tape punch loading code and what have you. So very interesting first experience. But then I've pretty much done every job in IT since then. I worked for Logica in the UK running large implementation projects. Then moved into the oil industry, was one of the first beta testers of Lotus Notes when it first came out. That got me my move to the United States, moved to Dallas in 92, and then got hired to Microsoft in 94, just before Windows 95 came out, and had a 16-year career with Microsoft. So I used to do all the competitive reviews with Bill and Steve, where we'd tell them how shit all the products were and what needed to be fixed. Those were always fun engagements, but very educational. And then I ended up running global accounts at Microsoft, and then technology policy engagement. So I ran the team that did all of our policy engagement around the world on sort of social and economic development policy. Left Microsoft in 2010, became Chief Technology Officer at Warner Music Group, where I did a fairly substantial replatforming, moving them to the cloud, doing a huge build of a large data analytics platform, Then moved from there to be CTO and interim CTO, head of technology at the New York Times. And that's did that gig for about 6 months, helping them transition through a leadership change. And then that's where I actually met our former partner, Adrian Boughton, who was running a small consulting company at the time. And when I got out of my gig at the New York Times, I joined Len and Adrian building our Digital Prism company for about 8 years until we got acquired about 18 months ago by ModUp. And we're now part of a much larger full service marketing agency as a
Well,
digital
that's
strategy
awesome.
company.
Both of you have you've both gone through the school of hard knocks,
Yep.
right? And that's where you really learn things. You can't learn these things in school and from books. You only learn through experience. I've been through some transformations myself. Boy, it's tough. It's
Yes.
really
we
tough.
we always talk about this with prospective clients. They're used to consultants that, kind of say everything but haven't actually done anything, and we're really the opposite
You
of
mean
that.
PowerPoint jockeys? You mean
Yeah,
PowerPoint jockeys?
we
We
promise
know who we're talking
no
about.
200-page decks, but we're going to actually tell you what we think you need to do and how to do it, and we're going to help you do it, because pretty much everyone at our company has at least a 10 to 20-year career
As an
doing this
operator.
work.
Yeah. And
That's awesome. So, all right. So, let's say I'm a mid-sized company. I'm not, a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm not an Intel or an Nvidia or a IBM or Amazon. I'm mid-tier. Maybe I grew up as a mom and pop shop that's now, hey, now I'm doing a couple hundred million a year. I'm
yep.
sitting pretty, but I'm on the precipice of some huge revolution that's going on with Gen AI. I'm starting to feel some competitive pressure that I've never felt before, and I'm sitting here going, "What do I do now?" So, what's my first move, guys? Besides calling you guys and hiring you,
Well,
uh,
that's the
That's
obvious
too
first move.
easy.
That's
that's
too
too
easy.
easy.
The
So,
second move would be to read our book, Getting Digital Done. Right. So
okay, there you go. Getting
that
digital
would be
done.
the
Nice
second.
plug, Jonathan.
That would be the second move. And then the third move, once you read Getting Digital Done, is to realize that driving a transformation like this, those of us that have lived through multiple transformations realize that it starts with people and culture, right? And it starts with leadership and vision. And so realizing that if you're the CEO or if you're the board of a mid-sized successful company, the only way you're going to get that company to transform is if you're leading that change, right? You can't hire somebody to drive the change for you. It has to come from the top. And then you have to build a culture that embraces change. And too many organizations, we've all worked in them, right? Too many organizations sort of are resistant to change because it comes with risk, it comes with challenges. But you need to build a culture that embraces change. And then there's a whole process, and obviously we lay it out in the book in terms of our work, our experience of how you drive these types of transformations. Interestingly enough, and I think we've learned this through our careers, is technology ends up being at the very end of the process, right?
Right.
It's the
Yeah.
tool that
It's
you
the
can
tool.
use. Yeah.
You don't start with the technology, and many of the customers that and clients that come to us literally because, hey, they're a CEO and they've decided they're going to retool their CRM platform, or they're going to retool their customer engagement platform. And we start by that conversation by, before we start that conversation, let's have a conversation about what you actually want to become as a firm, right? What's your ambition? What's the goal from doing that, implementing that technology? And you find too often that they haven't really thought out the strategy framework for the rationale for doing that transformation doesn't exist. So that's really where you need to start.
Okay, so there's a problem though in the world today. Gen AI is a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even said it on my show, and I think I'm right. If I don't have a Gen AI strategy, tool strategy, I'm going to be dead in the water. But how do I take that concept? Because it's fundamentally changing a lot of things.
Yep.
We agree
So,
with that 100%.
how do I take that concept? I don't want to be tool driven. I want to be strategic driven in my business. But I see this massive, huge digital transformation coming. And what do I
Yeah.
do? Right? Because you just mentioned, and I agree with you. You just mentioned, hey, don't just change tools for tools' sake. Right? I have to have
Well,
a
don't let
strategy
the
to do my
tool
MBA.
drive the change.
Yeah.
There
There's
you
a
go. Don't let the
direction you're
tool drive the
trying to
change.
go. Right.
But I'm seeing billions of dollars being spent, and that's why Nvidia is a $3 trillion company,
Um,
because people are just throwing money at them, saying, "I need to be part of that," but they don't know what to do with it.
right.
But if I don't throw money at it, am I falling behind? And as a mid-sized company, I don't have $50 million to buy
Well,
a
that's the problem if you're a mid-sized company is you don't have, if you take any Fortune 100 company, look, they can afford to spend 50 million, $100 million on a project and have it fail. The shareholders aren't going to be happy, but at the end of the day, they've got the capital, the capacity to absorb that sort of
to
loss.
absorb it. Yeah,
Mid-sized companies don't have that, right? They're sort of a one-shot deal. These are big, important investments to make, and in a sense, you've got to de-risk that investment, and it's very meaningful to not de-risk it, right? Because it could be life or death for the organization, right? So while the imperative is there, and nobody's arguing with the imperative, right? If I'm a small, mid-sized business today, and I'm competing with new entrants in my market, most of those new entrants are coming in are probably venture financed.
yep,
They operate as a startup. They start with the premise of being data driven, and now they're layering AI tooling and automation on top of that data driven strategy, right? You, if you're an existing incumbent player with a lead position in your market, you're already at a disadvantage, right? Because the velocity at which those firms can grow and grab customer base
it's
is
huge. It's
huge, right?
Yep.
So just getting
But what
started.
prevents me, Jonathan, what prevents me? I've got some capital, I'm mid-size, right?
Yep.
What prevents me from doing the same thing? Why can't I do it?
You absolutely can do it. So our argument is that it requires a thoughtful approach, right? Just throwing in the tools, right? We'll get you some advantage if your marketing department starts using Gen AI tools to create first drafts of copy for your advertising, what have you. There's no real harm in that. But we just completed a project for a major financial services institution in California, an insurance company. And there was a lot of experimentation going on with AI across the firm. And what they realized is that while that was good because it was socializing the value of these new AI tools across the business, it was changing the culture, right? Doing that without guardrails and principles was creating a massive risk for the organization, and it was unchanneled energy, right? And at the end of the day, an organization needs to channel its energy because you can use these tools and everybody gets excited about them. But to what end, right? And companies have limited tolerance for investment, right? So if you are going to invest money, then basically, can you do it in a directed fashion? Do it with energy, get people enthusiastic and what have you, but do it within a framework that has an ultimate goal
Yeah.
associated with it. You want
You're
to
So
talking
drive
about
what
revenue,
building
you
out
want to
good use cases, right, Jonathan? Which a
exactly.
lot of times it seems like people go with the technology first and then try to build use cases around the technology. We stress build the use cases, put extra thought into that, measure
right?
twice, cut once, and then we help
And
our
then drop
clients
the
find the right
technology in.
technology that fits those use cases. And especially with something like Gen AI, a lot of it comes down to risk tolerance,
Yeah,
hallucinations and things like that. We have clients that can't have hallucinations in the work they do because they've got specifications for building bridges and things like
Yeah, we
that, and it,
don't we
it
don't
can't be wrong.
right,
we don't want a Gen AI hallucinating on bridge building. That would be bad.
right.
Yeah.
So
But
so
we're very positive and gung ho about Gen AI as opposed to some of the trends that came before it. It's absolutely real and important, but that makes it all the more important to look at it logically, to understand what you're trying to do, and then figure out the right approach.
And to
And
be
that's
use
even
case
more
driven.
challenging because that technology is moving at light speed.
like yeah, faster than we can keep up
Look
with.
at
So
DeepSeek, and that changed everything 4
again,
weeks ago.
yeah. Don't and in 2 more weeks there'll be another model from somewhere else that does the same. So, Lynn, Jonathan mentioned channeling, and I love the concept. Channeling all that energy in your organization, right? So if I have all this energy in my organization, what are some of the things you can do to help channel? Because you talked about use cases. That's my goal. I want to get
Yep.
the use case out there. But how do I channel all that energy without killing it? Because anytime I constrain something, I have to dance this fine line, right? Because if I constrain it too much, everything starts slowing down and gets clogged up. So, what are some tips on channeling all that energy, creative energy that's out there right now?
We're a big fan of building centers of excellence within a company, and taking people in, not just leaders, but throughout an organization who are interested in modeling a change, and having them work together with guidelines and with support and with knowledge, and then using the learnings from those groups to help inform policy and governance.
I
And I
like
think,
what you said about top to bottom, management to the individual contributor, all
yeah,
across the board. Because I've been in COEs that were just all management heavy. Like nothing got done.
No, you need, and honestly, with a lot of this technology, the younger people and the less experienced people actually know more about the technology, and it's more native to them. So I think it's very important that it has to have top support and top involvement, but it can't just be at the top.
Gotcha.
These new technology changes, and I'll throw this into my life. My career moved much quicker than it would have, because I got into America Online and that stuff back in the late 90s. And suddenly I became the digital expert at a couple of the companies I was at, even though I was in my 20s. I think there are similar opportunities to identify high potential people in an organization, and people who understand technology and understand what can be done with it with the right guidance. And these kinds of and this is what we talk about when we're talking about people and process, and not just technology. Using these kind of centers of excellence, or other councils, can help you identify these people and frankly groom them, and get them into more senior positions.
So,
I,
Jonathan, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say, you asked an interesting question, which is how do you guide without constraining and without taking the
Right,
energy
exactly.
out, right? And one of the tools that we prefer, we're huge fans of principle-based governance models, right? So and it doesn't. We do a lot of work in the data space, so we help organizations build data governance principles, and we do a lot of work in the AI space, and we're helping organizations build AI principles. And we think that if you adopt a set of principles, those become the guardrails, right? So we do a lot of work with organizations at all layers of the organization, with a lot of participation, to say, okay, what are the 8 or 9 principles that this organization wants to live by as they experiment and deploy this technology, right? That provides your guardrails. So if you live within those principles, there's lots of room for experimentation. There's lots of room for high velocity proof of concept work and what have you. But everybody at least knows what the boundaries are. And I think the challenges and the risks come when it's an unconstrained experimentation, right? When you don't have those principles in place. So we're big fans of helping organizations build at the front end those principles, and then socializing those principles across the organization, and becoming something that every layer of the organization understands. Hey, if I want to experiment with this, as long as I don't contravene any of these principles, I'm going to be in a safe space, and I'm going to be able to do something that perhaps advances the business or advances the work that we do.
I really like that concept. I mean, there's some case studies. Nordstrom is one of the
Yeah,
best case studies on principle based management. Um, there's another, the constraining that you can do with principle based stuff is important, because I've seen this already with GenAI. When people are just left to their own vices, they're all over the
yeah,
place and nothing gets done. Nothing gets to completion.
You
So I
can
love
also
this.
be leaking very sensitive data, because
Oh,
every different Gen AI tool has different rules about how they treat your data. We
they're taking your data and training models. Let's just be brutally honest. I mean,
Yep.
they say no, we're not
right.
saving your prompts. No, you're not saving my prompts. You're feeding them into your model and then erasing the
Right.
prompt. Yeah, no big deal. Um, so I love this concept. You've given me some great. Now, if we look in the total transformation, I've got my goal. I've got my channel of energy. I'm pushing forward. How in the world do I measure when to cut that off? Is there a time that I say I'm not doing this anymore? This, or
I
do I just say I've already steered the ship in this direction and we're going no matter
right.
what? When is
I
that point of no return? Or do you guys just say, no, you've already thought this through. There's no point of no return. This is like full bore go.
I think one of the things we've learned over the last, well, certainly over our careers and certainly over the last 10 years of working with clients, is that very few of our clients start from the concept of having a product culture, right? And CEOs traditionally think of investments in technology. Once it gets to the technology investment, they think about, okay, it's a 3-year investment. We're going to spend $4 million on this investment, and then we're done, right? That's the end of it, right? That isn't how the world works, right?
No, it's not.
In the world today, particularly as you bring on new technologies like, exploiting the data assets in your organization, and that's a never-ending journey that you're on, right? It's
Right.
like once you establish the ambition to become a data-driven organization that has the ability to exploit data and layer on AI, advanced machine learning, predictive analytics, all of that good stuff, you've said that is a journey we are embarking on, and that journey has no end. The issue is, how do you manage that journey? How do you put the guides in place that make sure you're on the right path and you continue to be on the right path, and that you're getting benefit and value to the organization as you go on that
Uh,
journey? And that's all the discipline of product management, right? Product and program management that we are all familiar with from the software industry and the services industry, right? And so a large part of what we do with clients is helping them to understand that you need that discipline. And it's in the book. Actually, there's a whole section in the book about building a product culture, that it's once you embark on this journey, it doesn't end. That doesn't mean you're going to spend money forever and a day without any return, but you have to assume that once you're on that journey, it's a continuous
it's a
investment
it's
stream
yeah, it's a
that you are
recurring.
embarking on.
So I like that because a lot of times we think of a journey as having an ultimate endpoint. And what you guys are saying is just as long as I'm headed in the right direction, it doesn't matter
Yep.
because my endpoint, if I'm a wholly owned subsidiary or I'm a sole proprietorship, it's my business. What is my endpoint? What's my end game? Retirement? Give it to my kids.
Yeah. We don't talk about an end game so much as what's the North Star that you're
Yeah.
aiming
that you're
towards?
aiming for. I
And
like that.
then how do you make iterative progress towards that star?
Yeah.
And when you're framing out your roadmap, you're going to know a lot about what the next 6 months needs to look like in the
How
next year, and you're going to know very little about 3 or 4 years from now, and that's
so
okay.
how does that work though for startups, especially because I've done 3 startups. My goal in the startups was an exit strategy. That was my
Right.
goal, right? So this doesn't work well with guys that are very short term focused.
Well, but you know, all organizations have for-profit organizations. Actually, a large proportion of our clients are not-for-profit, which creates an interesting set
Oh,
of
that is
dynamics when it
interesting. Yeah.
comes to setting goals and objectives, right? Because they're more mission-driven. But let's take the private sector for a second. There won't ever be a day where driving growth, improving customer satisfaction, and driving profitability won't be metrics that I'm entirely focused on as leadership in an organization,
But
right?
but but if I'm short term focused, my profit may only care about the next 6 months
Yeah,
because my goal is to sell it and leave.
you can't
Then
be short-term focused. I mean,
okay, that's the key. Yeah.
that's the key. The
Yeah,
organizations that are
you can't be
embarking.
6 month focused. I
Yeah, you
mean,
can't.
you
Yeah,
have to be. I think for most of these initiatives, you need to be thinking in years, not in months.
and then another important part of there's another chapter in the book that is actually about how do I educate my board, right? And by educating the board, we include, for instance, if I'm private equity backed, how do I educate my private equity partners, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're embarking on this journey and you want long-term value creation for the organization, you need to build that coalition with those partners, right? That they need to be on board as well. There's no sense starting this if you've got, partners, board members, other financing partners, what have you, who say, no, we want our exit in 18 months and we just want, a very quick turnaround and we're all about cost control. Then, okay, there's some stuff you can probably do to optimize the organization and be more efficient, et cetera, drive better profitability, better EBITDA. But at the end of the day, you're not the
You're
type of
sacrificing.
organization that's setting yourself up for a long-term vision and this type of transformation.
Well, we saw this in Intel. I'm at Intel right now.
Yeah,
They gave our new CEO to come in and make fundamental changes. They gave him, after 3 years. They said, no, it's too hard. I'm like, we were moving in the right direction,
right.
right? So I always think, and I want your opinion on this, but if I'm going through a big, huge fundamental change, it's going to take 2 or 3 years. And maybe I do have investors. Maybe I'm a public company. Is it best to go private? Decrease the number of stakeholders that I have to bring on board, especially public companies where Wall Street is brutal. If you don't give me return every quarter, you're going in the tank.
I think there's two sides to that question, right? So the philosophical side of, or not philosophical, but the rational side of, are we better as a private company without those stakeholders so that we have more control over our own,
And I can
destiny?
do things
Right.
that,
And right.
yeah.
But let's set that aside for a second,
Okay.
right? Let's say that we're living with those constraints. One of the critical components of any strategy that we help our clients build is near-term and continuous value delivery, right? Too many times, we've all lived through this. I'm sure you've lived through this,
Yeah.
Darren. I've certainly lived through this. We've all been involved in big transformations where the payoff is 3 years down the road. And by the time we are 2 years in, the leadership team has changed, right? And there's not the mandate for the transformation anymore, right? It's like we've all been there, right? So
Right. Yeah.
one of the things we spend a lot of time with CEOs, with boards, and with senior leadership teams is, and particularly and project teams and product teams that are driving these transformations, is you need to be able to demonstrate that this investment has a payoff. It needs to pay off. It needs to have value created for the organization in a matter of months. And then, 3 months in, you need to be able to show the value of the investment. And then 3 months after that. And there just needs to be this continuous cadence of value delivery that builds ongoing support from the stakeholders who need to provide that support. If you're not doing that and you're saying, hey, I promise 3 years from now, we're going to deliver the big result, that's not a winning strategy in our experience.
Yeah. I can see that. That would be like telling a customer, give me your money now, and I'll come back in 3 years with something. And we've
Right.
seen that happen.
Yes,
The
it
Denver
happens too
airport
often.
is a great example of that. Oh, the brand new Denver airport, unleashed disaster. The baggage system was eating luggage.
Right.
The docking system for semi trucks wasn't tall enough, so the semi trucks couldn't back in. They were getting smashed by the overhangs. I mean, because they weren't doing the iterative
Yes.
value
Yep.
prop, which I appreciate quite a bit.
I agree with everything Jonathan said about showing value throughout, but he also named one of the reasons why we like working with some of the nonprofits we do. Nonprofits tend to work a little bit slower. Their technology may not be as cutting edge as other places, but they are mission driven, and they also are allowed to think longer and more strategically about
Yeah.
where they're trying to go. So some of the most satisfying transformations that we've been able to help guide have been with these nonprofit member associations where they can look 5 years out. To Jonathan's point, we're not in any way saying that the payoff was all 5 years out. The payoff has to
The
happen
payoff, yeah,
throughout, but they're able to see it through, I think, a little better
Yeah, that's
sometimes
true.
than a private equity backed company, or certainly a public company that really often just has to be more transactional and more focused on quarter to quarter rather than a long term investment led strategy.
So I love the value, the iterative value, because that also shows me progress. Am I hitting miles? Am I moving to that North Star, or have I
Yep.
just stalled? Right? Oh, shiny object over here. Now I'm going to
Yeah.
go chase this over here. I mean, that helps prevent that sort of thing from happening as well. But in a 5-year plan, how often am I making adjustments to that North Star? Does the North Star ever
Yep.
change?
Well,
Or how I
that's
get
the
there
key.
changes?
That's the key to that iterative approach, which is the iterative approach allows you to demonstrate value along the way. That's goal one, but it also lets you adjust. And nobody should be kidding themselves that the North Star you developed for a project that maybe has an implementation horizon of, let's say, 3 years or 3 years plus, that North Star is going to be the same, right? Markets are going to change, your competitive landscape is going to change, the dynamics of the industry that you're in are going to change, right? And the advantage of doing these projects, and this goes back to product management discipline, right? The advantage of managing these types of transformation as if they were a product is that continuous listening to the market, right? Continuous listening for change and being able to feed that change into the planning process for the transformation and to adjust, to move left and right as the target moves left and right. Because again, we've all lived through, situations where
Oh
we've
yeah.
done large scale projects and the target isn't where it was when we started the project 3 years ago
No,
anymore,
that
right?
is
And
true.
what
Well,
we've delivered doesn't have as much value for the organization. So,
yeah, especially with Gen AI, where things are
yep,
happening so
who
quick,
knows?
I can't keep up with it. Hey guys, this has been great. I learn new things every time I talk to people. I got double the power today. My two superheroes, Lynn and Jonathan. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate your time.
You're very welcome. It was a real
Appreciate
pleasure,
it. Thank
Darren.
you.
Thank you.
If people want to find out more, your book is on Amazon, I'm assuming,
Yes, it
Absolutely.
is.
and
And
Barnes and
other leading
Noble,
sites,
right, Lynn? Barnes and
both
Noble as well.
places.
All
It's
right,
called
good,
Getting Digital Done. And
great.
yeah,
And
thank you very
they
much.
can reach out to you on LinkedIn, I'm guessing,
For sure.
LinkedIn
We're
or
both on
go to
LinkedIn.
modop.com, and
or
we're
Mata.
Modop Strategic Consulting.
All right, awesome. Hey, thanks again, guys.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much,
very
Darren. It was
much.
a
Our pleasure.
Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to Embracing Digital Transformation today. If you enjoyed our podcast, give it 5 stars on your favorite podcasting site or YouTube channel. You can find out more information about Embracing Digital Transformation at embracingdigital.org. Until next time, go out and embrace the digital revolution.